Are you ready to spend millions of dollars to buy an island that is melting into the ocean? That's not a joke. But the harsh reality of the $4 billion mega project, the world islands in Dubai. Once expected to be the eighth wonder with 300 artificial islands mimicking the map of the Earth, but after 2 decades, this paradise is turning into a living nightmare. Data from NASA's satellites and legal reports have revealed a horrifying truth. The islands are sinking by 5 millimeters each year and eroding by up to 15,000 cubic meters of sand annually. Behind the flowery advertisements are piles of sand and ruins without electricity, without clean water, and completely isolated. Human pride in the face of nature is paying the price with a crumbling infrastructure and endless billions of dollars in debt. It's time to wake up from this luxurious dream. Let's look straight at the truth that is buried beneath the deep sea. So suffocating. That is not only the feeling of the dying marine creatures at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, but also the price to pay for one of the most reckless illusions in human history. In 2003, amidst the scorching desert sun, a surreal ambition was born to redefine the map of the Earth, not on paper, but right on the sea. To realize this crazy dream, people acted like madmen. 321 million cubic meters of sand was scraped from the seabed. 386 million tons of rubble were hewn from the majestic mountain ranges, transported by convoys of trucks day and night to serve as foundations. Can you imagine? It was a terrifyingly large-scale geological devastation, just to create a complex of 300 artificial islands spanning 9 kilometers in width and 6 kilometers in length, stretching out into the open sea. The gigantic dredging ships screech with each pass, spraying sand using rainbowing technology, creating proud arcs in the sky from a height of 676 kilometers in space. The GPS satellite system scans every millimeter to locate each grain of sand, the combination of Dubai's financial elite, centuries of land reclamation experience from Dutch experts, and over 40 top global consulting firms has transformed the ocean into an industrial construction site. All of this is just to serve one goal: land production, like assembling a car, then selling it to the ultra-rich, for prices ranging from 15 to 50 million USD per island. They want to shift the economy from oil to luxury real estate. Before the market went wild, 70% of the islands were sold out on paper before the sand had a chance to settle, bringing in billions of USD in deposits. Since when did humans believe that money could buy the permanence of geology? Why does such a grand dream, such a luxurious paradise, still require hundreds of millions of tons of stone and sand extracted from the earth just to exist? We arrogantly think that we have conquered nature. We hail it as a wonder. But what is the truth? When the last stones of the surrounding seawall were dropped, nature did not back down. That wall not only blocks the waves, it inadvertently slams shut a ribcage. And this geological monster began to suffocate when the last stones of the 27 kilometers long seawall were dropped. People proudly called it a solid shield protecting paradise. But from the perspective of hydrodynamics, it is an act of strangling. Nature, the stone walls surrounding the entire archipelago, is no different from a gigantic iron cage, completely eliminating the natural tidal circulation. Look at the stark but terrifying figures. The sea current speed has plummeted from 1.5 meters per second to just 0.03 meters per second, a state of water that is almost completely still. The natural self-cleaning ability of the ocean in the inner canals has been completely eradicated. The initial design prioritized aesthetics too much to create a world map from above, but forgot a basic survival rule: the sea needs to breathe. The still water transforms the shallow and narrow channels into enormous heat traps under the scorching sun of the Dubai desert. The water temperature inside the archipelago skyrockets, exceeding the surrounding sea by 7.5 degrees Celsius. Water evaporates at a rapid rate, pushing the salinity beyond 40 psu, and the hypersalinity state turns this place into a toxic environment, exceeding the tolerance limits of most native marine organisms. Water does not circulate. Dissolved oxygen completely disappears. A true dead zone is formed. Not stopping there, the fine silt flow clings tightly to the lake bed area, causing the water turbidity to Spike. The benthic ecosystem is completely suffocated under a sediment layer up to 5 cm. Fig, are you willing to spend tens of millions of dollars to own a luxurious island located in the middle of a deadly saltwater lake? Are we really creating a resort paradise or just building a massive waste container in the middle of the ocean? But this suffocation doesn't just stop at the lack of oxygen. When everything below starts to decompose, it begins to emit an odor. A scent that is certainly not on the aristocracy's list of favorites. The most luxurious thing in this paradise turns out not to be the gold-plated villas or the arriving supercars, but rather breathing clean air. The stark truth is that in the warm, still waters like a stagnant pond, the phenomenon of eutrophication has erupted beyond control. Seaweed proliferates at a terrifying rate. When their short life cycle ends, the dead algae sink to the bottom, decompose anaerobically, and release a multitude of toxic gases. The consequence: the once crystal clear water, heavily advertised in the media, has turned into a murky black, emitting a foul stench. No different from a sewer in the middle of a summer afternoon. Looking at the lesson from the sister project Palm Jumeirah, the residents there had to collectively cry for help because they couldn't even open the windows of their expensive apartments. The tragedy lies in the severe lack of infrastructure. The world islands have no sewage pipeline system connecting them to the mainland. All household waste that needs to be disposed of must be collected and transported by sea with costs that are absurdly high. And the inevitable consequence has occurred. Engine oil and domestic wastewater from hundreds of ships daily leak directly into the enclosed water channels with no outlet. Imagine you spend tens of millions of dollars to buy a private beach, but the children can never set foot in the water because of the toxic algae and bacteria that are everywhere. To create this so-called paradise, 1.22 square kilometers of natural coral reefs were completely wiped out, and native oyster beds were permanently buried under hundreds of millions of cubic meters of mud. The efforts to implant artificial corals were later deemed a dismal failure by scientists, as nature cannot recover in the brief span of a human lifetime. Where is the true value of a $10 million United States dollars villa when you can't let your child play in the water? Can ostentatious luxury truly mask the stench of an ecosystem rotting from within day by day? The luxury paradise has actually turned into a toxic biological trap for both humans and creatures. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. This place is not only suffocating and toxic, it is quietly disappearing right under the feet of the wealthy. When the toxicity has ravaged the atmosphere, an even colder truth begins to unfold. This $1 million paradise is truly melting and sinking beneath the ocean's depths. This is not a cruel rumor, but a harsh conclusion drawn from the images taken by NASA's satellites and the International Space Station ISS. Though islands are literally sinking, data from the surveying company Fugro MPA reveals a shocking figure. The -1 subsidence rate reaches 5 millimeters per year. Not stopping there, the disaster of coastal erosion deeply gouges the islands, washing away 10,000 to 15,000 cubic meters of precious sand into the sea each year. Geologically, this mechanism is extremely ruthless. The dredge sand foundation, which has not yet reached natural stability, is very prone to liquefaction when subjected to the heavy load of solid concrete structures. The sand eroded by internal waves does not disappear completely. Instead, it drifts down to fill the shipping channels between the islands. As a result, the waterways have become too shallow, turning the movement of the super-rich by yacht into a risky joke. Some unevenly subsided areas have torn and cracked the infrastructure above. The owners of the seaside villas bitterly realized that after a decade, the sea level had crept 15 centimeters closer to their living rooms. All modern technologies like vibro compaction or millions of USD spent each year on beach nourishment are just a drop in the ocean. The nature of beach sand is that it is loose sediment. It will always find a way to return to the ocean floor. From space, the soft shapes of countries on the world map gradually blur, and some small islands have even been erased or partially submerged under the waterline. You can use money to build a magnificent castle on the sand, but can you make each grain of sand stop flowing beneath your feet? This is no longer a display of technical prowess. but a desperate battle between human wallets and the gravity of the earth, and that battle was destined to lose, because when the billionaire's wallet suddenly ran dry in 2008, this world was abandoned and came to a halt. In September 2008, a financial earthquake swept across the globe and dealt a devastating blow to Dubai. International capital fled in a rush, dragging the parent company, Nakheel, into a massive debt of up to $25 billion United States dollars. All construction activities on the archipelago were immediately frozen, and the horrifying reality is revealed. More than 90% of the islands still remain just barren piles of sand in the middle of the ocean to this day. The sister super project, the universe, an ambitious plan to simulate both the moon and the sun, was immediately scrapped. The plans to create a luxurious world immediately turned into a desolate, gloomy map of sand when viewed from above. For a long time, except for the island of Lebanon, which operated at a standstill like an isolated nightclub, hundreds of secondary investors from the UK, Russia, or China accepted to flee, abandon contracts, or go bankrupt. The plots of land worth tens of millions of dollars have become dead assets. The project has officially been labelled a white elephant, a bitter symbol of waste and unrealistic delusions. Stepping onto these islands, one can only feel an apocalyptic atmosphere. Rusty cranes standing alone, pointing up at the sky, unfinished construction sites buried in sand with a bitter, salty smell. There are no machines roaring. No dazzling party lights here. Only a terrifying silence remains. Just the sound of the waves gently eroding billions of dollars, disappearing into the depths of the ocean. Ask yourself, why are humans in such a hurry to redefine the map of the earth when they can't even manage their own finances? Is this perhaps a gigantic sand monument erected to commemorate excessive greed? But the tragedy is that choosing to abandon this project is not free at all. It is consuming money every day in a way that no one could have foreseen. If environmental disasters choke nature, then the coarse machinery behind it is a toxin that tightens the wallet of anyone who inadvertently ventures here. Welcome to Khyber Battery, the maintenance trap, where cash flow is burned endlessly. Let's look at the story of Penguin Marine, the company that once held the exclusive rights to provide transportation services to the islands. They used to pay a licensing fee of up to $1.36 million. Asked each year just to be allowed to carry passengers. But by 2010, a shocking lawsuit revealed the bitter truth. Penguin Marine would rather file a lawsuit and face heavy penalties to terminate the contract than continue operating. The reason is very simple. The shipping channels have become too severely silted. Ships were constantly getting stuck, and the repair costs were suffocating any profits. The nature of the world archipelago is a dynamic hydraulic system. The sea sand never stands still. To prevent the islands from being wiped out or the canals from turning into swamps, maintenance dredging must be carried out periodically and indefinitely, even if there are no residents living there. Nakheel still has to pour millions of USD into the sea each year just to maintain the basic shape of these sand blocks. The operating costs OPEX here are tens of times higher than on the mainland. Fresh water. No pipelines. Every drop of fresh water must be transported by barge or filtered through expensive on-site desalination systems. Energy is completely reliant on bulky diesel generators, consuming thousands of litres of oil each day and continuously emitting toxic smoke into the paradise atmosphere. Management fees. Real estate here bears some of the highest service fees in the world. To avoid the obligation to refund the furious investors, the Nakheel Group even had to resort to cunning legal arguments, calling the island's noticeable sinking calculated subsidence. But what kind of calculation is this when it is essentially a toxic financial loop? The more it sinks, the more sand has to be pumped in. And the more sand is pumped in, the higher the cost rise. If Nakheel stops maintenance for just a few years, the entire archipelago will be flattened by the waves. This is not at all a profitable real estate investment. It is a long-term debt to nature that cannot be repaid. Is a paradise still worth it when every day passes? You have to throw stacks of money into the sea just to keep it from sinking. Are the super rich buying vanity, or are they actually purchasing a suffocating financial burden? And even if someone is rich enough to overcome this financial trap to complete their dream mansion, they soon realize another suffocating feeling, much more haunting, the loneliness in the middle of the ocean, when the sunset fades over the Persian Gulf. A haunting and empty scene begins to unfold. 10p.m. The luxurious streetlights still shine brightly, illuminating the expensive villas, but looking up at the windows, all you see is a deep, desolate black. Welcome to Ghost Inventory, the phenomenon of ghost inventory among the ultra-rich. The stark reality is that most of the million-dollar properties here are purchased by tycoons from Russia and China solely for the purposes of money laundering, asset sheltering, or speculative hoarding on paper. Many owners don't even bother to set foot in their private kingdom for a year or even several years, and so those who accidentally move here to live will experience the feeling of a glass cage that is expensive. On the outside, you live in the setting of a 5-star hotel, but inside, this place completely lacks the minimum functions of a true community. No schools, no hospitals, no convenience stores. Want to buy a carton of milk or face a late-night emergency? That is an extremely complex and dangerous logistics problem. All transportation relies solely on boats or helicopters. Just a small sea storm or an incident at the port, and the entire population is immediately and completely isolated from the outside world. That is the typical Instagram trap. The drone footage from above is dazzling and magnificent. But the reality of living on the ground floor is suffocating. Maddening loneliness accompanied by the stench of rotting seaweed lurking on the beach. Your neighbors are absolute millionaires, turning the entire street into a lavish, eye-catching cemetery. A series of families who were once excited to move in had to quietly pack their bags and flee in less than 2 years, even though transaction figures in the real estate market have danced in the billions of USD. The essence of the world islands remains unchanged. This is a place for tycoons to safeguard their money, but it has never been a place to build a true home. You can use money to own the entire world, but if there is no one around, no laughter from neighbors, what does that world mean? Is it possible that the pinnacle of opulent wealth ultimately leads to utter isolation? And then, when both wealth, illusions, and isolation reach their limits, everything must stand before the fairest and most ruthless judge. In the end, all human illusions must face a harsh reality. These islands are only about 4 meters above the average sea level. Meanwhile, climate change is pushing global sea levels up by an average of 3.2 millimeters per year. Let's do a deadly resonance calculation. The island sinks due to gravity and erosion while the sea level rises due to melting ice. The lifespan of the world islands is being shortened day by day. According to forecasts from the Abu Dhabi Environment Agency, in a severe climate change scenario, most of these artificial islands will be completely submerged. The ecological damage caused by humans is irreversible. The destruction of the original coral reefs has stripped away the only natural protective barrier of the coastline. Now, late efforts like the Heart of Europe project aimed at replanting corals or creating artificial snow or the zero-discharge drip policies are just a drop in the ocean compared to the massive scale of the 300 islands. As storms at sea become more intense and sea levels rise, the cost to revive this chaos will skyrocket to a level that no economy can bear. But despite everything, Dubai continues to outline new mega land reclamation projects, ignoring the costly warnings from geology. The lesson from the world islands is bitter but clear. Nature never compromises with technical blueprints or human hubris. The fate of this $4 billion mega project was predetermined. The lavish piles of sand will eventually return to being sand at the bottom of the deep sea. When humans try to suffocate the ocean with stone and concrete, the ocean will simply swallow it all. What are we really leaving for the next generation? The pinnacle of architectural wonders or just heaps of geological waste abandoned beneath the ocean? It's time for us to stop building suffocating expensive dreams and start learning to respect every breath of the ocean. $14 billion, hundreds of millions of tons of rock and sand and countless cutting-edge technologies, all of it created a magnificent world on paper. but turned into a stifling disaster in real life. The world islands of Dubai are not just a costly lesson in finance or technology, but a wake-up call for human arrogance in the face of nature's laws. Should humanity continue to spend billions of dollars to modify the planet? Or is it time for us to accept the limits of nature? If you had enough money, would you be willing to spend tens of millions of USD to own an island in a dead zone like this? Please leave your opinion in the comments section below. Let's discuss. If you find this video offers unique and profound perspectives, please like it to spread this message to more people. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next journeys. Decoding mega projects and architectural disasters. Don't hesitate to share this video with your friends for some thought-provoking insights. Please note this video is based on publicly available sources, geological data, environmental reports, and economic analyses from international organizations such as NASA, ISS, FUGRO-MPA, and the Abu Dhabi Environment Agency. The content is intended for knowledge sharing, analyzing social and environmental perspectives, and critiquing development systems and policies, and is in no way aimed at attacking or defaming any specific individual or organization.